All right, so the Houthis were just caught red-handed with Iranian missiles, so Israel bombed Yemen, which actually makes sense big picture. We are going to connect those dots, just bear with me. I mean, we got some pretty interesting footage that just came out from the Yemeni National Resistance Forces, a group we'll go into more detail about here in a minute, where they seized 750 tons of Iranian weapons heading to the Houthis. And not just like components or ammunition or anything like that, full-on anti-ship missiles. The kind that the Houthis have been using to fire at not just commercial vessels, but U.S. military ships in the region as well. Now, before diving into all of that, a quick thank you to the sponsor of today's video, USCCA. The United States Concealed Carry Association is a national organization with over 860,000 members with a mission to prepare and protect responsible Americans through training, education, and self-defense liability insurance. They offer a wide range of online and in-person classes for everyone, from a first-time gun owner to an experienced shooter. And here's a quick look at some of the classes around me here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Fun fact, actually, the Outpost Armory right there on the screen is the range here in town that I go to shoot at. Now, to find a training class near you, check out the link in the pinned comment and the description below. Thank you to USCCA for sponsoring today's video. And with that, let's get back to it. Now, overnight, the IDF says they carried out a series of airstrikes against Houthi targets in Yemen. A little bit different this time around. They used drones, not fixed-wing aircraft. The IDF said they struck and dismantled military infrastructure belonging to the Houthi terrorist regime at the port of Hodeidah. They say, unlike previous attacks, Monday's airstrikes did not involve dozens of fighter jets, refuelers, and spy planes. Rather, it was carried out by Israeli drones. It marked the first Israeli strikes on Yemen since July 7th. In the interim, the Houthis have launched 6 ballistic missiles and at least 2 drones at Israel, attacks that caused no damage or injuries. Got to add to that number because since this report came out earlier today, the Houthis have since claimed responsibility for at least 2 more missiles fired at Israel, and it does look like those were intercepted before entering Israeli airspace. Now, notably in this statement, we're going to connect the dots. Here's the first part of it. The IDF says the port of Hodeidah has been used, among other things, to transfer weapons from the Iranian regime, which are then used by the Houthis to execute terrorist attacks against the state of Israel and its allies. And with that, let's get to the clip that was actually put out through U.S. Central Command, which is interesting. Our government doesn't usually put out clips of other forces like this, but nonetheless, interesting look at the seizure here. So U.S. Central Command said, quote, "Congratulations to the Yemeni National Resistance Forces, led by General Saleh, for the largest seizure of Iranian advanced conventional weapons in their history. The NRF intercepted and seized over 750 tons of munitions and hardware, to include hundreds of advanced cruise, anti-ship, and anti-aircraft missiles, warheads and seekers, components, as well as hundreds of drone engines, air defense equipment, radar systems, and communications equipment. According to the NRF, there were manuals in Farsi, and many of the systems were manufactured by a company affiliated with the Iranian Ministry of Defense that is sanctioned by the United States. The illegal shipment was intended for use by the Iranian-backed Houthis. They say the actions of the NRF support the United Nations Security Council resolution and are a direct reflection of their commitment to a safe Yemen, Red Sea, and a Gulf of Aden." General Michael Kurilla, the commander of U.S. Central Command, praised the actions of the NRF, saying, quote, "We commend the legitimate government forces of Yemen who continue to interdict the flow of Iranian munitions bound for the Houthis. The interdiction of this massive Iranian shipment remains the most destabilizing actor in the region, shows that Iran remains the most destabilizing actor in the region. Limiting the free flow of Iranian support to the Houthis is critical to regional security, stability, and freedom of navigation." Now, a couple interesting aspects in this clip here. First off, this is kind of, there's one of the missiles right there. Wait till you see these things assembled, like full-on missiles that Iran was shipping down this time around. It's probably decreased over the course of the last couple of years because the United States and others have been, we've really increased our capacity in the Red Sea to be able to conduct this type of interdiction. I didn't know the National Resistance Forces had naval assets to do this. Look at that. There you go. Some of the missiles. That's what was in this shipment. Little safe looking. There were some, I think that's more of a ballistic missile. There was a report I heard that included in this interception were interceptors, surface-to-air interceptors, and or the radar systems associated with that. These blue ones are the anti-ship missiles, which are pretty advanced, all things considered, and they've been pretty effective most effective at striking unarmed and not well-protected commercial vessels, albeit there's been no indication that any of those anti-ship missiles have actually struck military targets. But I did hear a report that there were some of the air defense assets seized here as well. I'm not entirely sure where those would be in this picture, and it might just be the radars. But nonetheless, the kind of funny aspect with all of this, good. This is a designated terrorist organization with less munitions today than they were going to have. And that's the issue here is, according to the United Nations, the Houthis cannot be on the receiving. It's a designated terrorist organization. They can't be on the receiving end of all of this weaponry from Iran or anyone else for that matter. Now, the funny piece here, I keep kind of getting sidetracked. The funny piece here is that the Houthis for years have been saying that everything they used to fire at previously Saudi Arabia, now Israel, the United States, the commercial vessels, be it ballistic missiles, drones, cruise missiles, unmanned surface vessels, everything, they say, hey, this is all domestically manufactured. We're putting this stuff together here in Yemen. We're building it. We have a manufacturing industry here in Yemen. And that's never really been the case. The Defense Intelligence Agency here in the United States, who never puts out content, about a year ago put together a roll-up. I'll link it in the description below because it's a pretty cool report showing all of the different ways and the types of munitions that the Iranians smuggle to the Houthis. So we know that. There's a couple, not warheads, but seekers, guidance systems that would go on the nose of a missile system or a drone. There's one of their, that's one of the Shahed-style drones, longer-range drone. Yeah, it's the full-on systems here. So, nonetheless, seeing all of this stuff captured, it kind of sticks it back in the Houthis' face and say, like, oh, you guys are manufacturing these. No, clearly you are still just on the receiving end of Iranian military equipment. And I was kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt over the course of the last couple months at least, just given how much of a lockdown there's been on the Houthis getting new equipment with so many people watching that area. I thought, hey, who knows? Maybe they're smuggling in some of these components that cannot be manufactured in Yemen, and they're putting them together. So, they're not manufacturing it, but it's kind of like IKEA, right? They got all the parts, they get all the tools, and then they can, maybe say, look at what we built. This kind of settles that, doesn't it? There's nothing about putting this stuff together. These are full-on missiles, radar systems, guidance systems, a lot of ammunition and small arms there at the beginning. I think there's even a lot of RPGs here as well. They're kind of hyper-focused on there's some RPGs. And here you go, light machine guns, mortars. Oh, man-pad, surface-to-air launchers. Looks like recoil. No, there's RPG. Yeah, a little bit of everything here with the Houthis. So, nonetheless, pretty significant roll-up. ATGMs, anti-tank guided missiles there on the right. More RPGs. 750 tons is those are kind of nice-looking stocks there, aren't they? It's fancy. A lot of scopes. Nonetheless, pretty significant roll-up here by the National Resistance Forces, which is worth getting into them here briefly. The National Resistance Forces were formed back in 2018, and depending on who you ask today, they number somewhere between 3,000 and 10,000 total fighters. Some sources, when you include a bunch of different allied groups, will get that number over 30,000, like in the 35 to 40,000 total range. But a key difference here is the NRF is not the Republic of Yemen. It is not the government of Yemen, which makes it interesting when you look back at the CENTCOM statement here, where they say, when General Kurilla said, quote, "We commend the legitimate government forces of Yemen who continue to interdict the flow of Iranian munitions." The NRF is not the legitimate government of Yemen. It's a resistance force operating in the western portion of the country. Their primary objective is combating and pushing back the Houthis, and they're operational on the west coast, whereas the Republic of Yemen, the actually internationally recognized state of Yemen, the government and military, is more in the central and eastern portion of the country. Now, at times, the NRF has kind of rolled up under the Republic of Yemen. They in a lot of cases, have overlapping objectives and desired end states, but the NRF is not, again, it is not the internationally recognized government of Yemen. It's a movement, a national resistance force. I mean, it kind of says it in its own name, operating in the West, pushing back against the Houthis. And it does look like, for what it's worth, there's clearly some CENTCOM involvement here. If U.S. Central Command is publishing this video and praising it as soon as it comes out, pretty clear that the United States in some way, shape, or form provided maybe, at the very least, intelligence to the NRF to be able to carry out this raid. Now, I mentioned that earlier today the Houthis did carry out drone and missile strikes against Israel, or they attempted to. It does sound like those were intercepted. It's been a pretty quiet week for the Houthis, all things considered, especially when compared to last week. Last week, they attacked and sunk 2 commercial vessels. I want to say as many as 14 sailors killed. I've seen mixed numbers on that still, but nonetheless, that was something we hadn't seen from the Houthis since December. It had been a long time since they'd been going after these commercial vessels. There was a pretty significant stretch in there where it was the U.S. military fighting against the Houthis, but then we reached a ceasefire with them, or declared a ceasefire back in May. And from May until last week, so about, 8-week period on or about, pretty quiet, all things considered. The occasional missile and drone launches at Israel, which Israel doesn't want, and the defense minister continues to say, we are not going to allow this, we're not going to stand for it, we're going to continue striking Houthi targets. But last week, something changed, and the Houthis decided it's time to start going back after commercial vessels. Again, 2 sunk in a 48-hour period. So compared to that, it actually has been a relatively calm week. Now, just earlier today, following their missile and drone attack against Israel, the Houthis released this clip praising, or they say it's a message from the Yemeni Mujahideen to the heroes of the Al-Qassam brigades, that's Hamas, and all of the fighters in the land of Palestine. They say, quote, "You are victorious, God willing, through your resilience and steadfastness, and by defeating the Arab-Israeli-American normalization project and crushing it with the first shots in the battle of the Al-Aqsa flood." So they're already declaring a victory for Hamas and for the axis of resistance, which they haven't used that term in quite a while. That used to be kind of front and center in a lot of the marketing, from Hezbollah to Hamas to the Houthis to some of the militias in Iraq and Syria, and of course, back to the IRGC. Since the 12-day war, when Israel kind of took it to Iran in a lot of ways, haven't seen the axis of resistance mentioned a whole awful lot. But I do think the continued shipments of high-end military equipment shows that Iran is not stopping anytime soon. They've got a pretty valuable resource in Yemen with the Houthis, which does kind of tell us something about what we might expect from their offensive operations here and going forward. With Iran pretty significantly weakened, their missile programs definitely took some hits. They have far fewer launchers today than they did just a couple months ago, and they've definitely lost some of their capabilities when it comes to Hezbollah, Hamas, and some of the militias in Iraq and Syria. The Houthis are kind of the one entity that hasn't been largely affected, right? They've definitely been on the receiving end of airstrikes, both from Israel and the United States, but compared to some of these other groups, the Houthis are still doing pretty well, all things considered. That said, it wouldn't be surprising to see the Houthis kind of dial things back, because Iran doesn't have as many proxy groups available to them today as they have in the past, at least capability-wise. Recognizing what the United States and Israel could do to further degrade the Houthis' capabilities, they very well may say, hey, ease up on those commercial vessels. We don't want to get back into something with the United States, with the U.S. Navy there in the Red Sea. That was not going well for the Houthis. And what we're seeing in terms of their attacks against Israel are, 1 or 2 at a time every couple days. And from what we can tell, all of those munitions for quite a while now have been intercepted well before they've even reached Israeli territory. So yes, it's something. The Houthis are continuing to do a thing. They're continuing to wave their banner and say, we are supporting the people of Gaza, but they're not really crossing over that line that would precipitate or kind of justify, if you will, a very large scale Israeli or Israeli and American attack in Yemen. My gut says that's probably where they're going to try to walk the line for quite a while here. But nonetheless, thought it was interesting to show this clip of the NRF, we don't hear a lot about, actually getting in there and seizing a bunch of these munitions that the Houthis otherwise would have used against commercial vessels and then military assets belonging to the United States, specifically in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden, and then some of the missile components they're firing at civilian targets in Israel. But that's all I got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.